Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nate McDonald with the state of Utah. I'm pleased to be here up at the University of Utah with Dean Taylor Randall and also Natalie Gochner with Kempsey Gardner Institute and Nathan Siegert, who is the lead researcher for this project that we're going to introduce today. Just a matter of housekeeping. I will be managing the Zoom meeting. We will allow for questions and answers afterwards. Right now, if you have questions, I would ask you to either send me a notification just by raising your hand on the Zoom meeting, or also you can put it in the comments. And when we come to that point in time, I will come to you and let you know when your time is ready to ask a question, and we'll unmute your mic so you can ask that question to the appropriate person. We'll go ahead and get started, and I'll turn the time over to Dean Taylor Randall.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. We appreciate you taking a few minutes to hear about this new research project that's been done by the Mariner S. Eccles Institute of Economics and Quantitative Analysis. As mentioned earlier in the governor's press conference, as we see cases rise, we become increasingly nervous about its effect of the rising cases on the economy of the state of Utah. We know via observation that as people become less and less sure of their health situation, meaning they don't feel safe interacting in public, that begins to drag on our economy. And certainly the news in this research brief is good news, in that we find that if individuals will actually mask up as they interact in the economy, it gives confidence to others to also engage in economic activity. So what we wanted to do briefly is allow Natalie Gochner to give you a state of the economy in the state of Utah with all of the work that her team does at the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute, and then have Nathan Siegert, a professor of economics here at the David Eccles School of Business, present this research briefing, and then allow you to ask questions so that you understand what the significance and the policy implications are of the research. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Natalie Gochner.
Thank you, Taylor. Nice to be with everyone today. I've been asked to briefly summarize the state of the Utah economy now that we are 8 months into this pandemic. The context will set the stage for the mask requirement research that's been released today. I've boiled my summary down into three high-level points. First, the Utah economy continues to perform better than most, if not all, states. And that's a real blessing to our state, even though we still have a lot of challenging things facing us. The Utah unemployment rate stands at 4.1%. That's nearly 2 percentage points lower than the national average. In addition, the contraction in the Utah economy on a year-over basis stands today at about 0.5%, so minus 0.5%. Nationally, the equivalent number is minus 6%. So we are orders of magnitude smaller in the contraction occurring here in Utah. As an example for just how significant this is, the current contraction that the nation faces, I mentioned minus 6%, that's about where Utah was in late April and early May. And so at our very worst is where the US economy is today. The second point I want to make is that this COVID-19 recession, which is what I believe it will be known as in the history books, has been incredibly sudden, severe, and uneven to the Utah economy. The suddenness is that it came seemingly from out of nowhere. The severity is the depth of the contraction and the hardship it's placed on many Utahns. But really, I think most importantly, it's been uneven, and it's been uneven by geography. So where you live in the state, it's been uneven by race, ethnicity. It's been uneven by occupation and industry, and it's been uneven by gender. I think this will go down as a pink collar recession that's been harder on women than on men. Happy to address some of those in the question and answer if you're interested. And then the third and final point I'll make is that the Utah economy today, I believe, faces a very important inflection point. And that inflection point can either be negative or positive. And that's why this research is so important. The negative side is these rising case counts, which cripple consumer confidence and take away from our interest in engaging in the economy because we fear for our safety. And that's a real negative for the economy. The positive side is that we have great news on the vaccine front and that we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. And what we need to do is bridge this gap from where we are today to where we need to be to feel some sort of sense of normalcy in our economy. And I think that's what makes this mask research so interesting, because it's part of controlling our destiny, that we now know that by these masks requirements that we actually are able to have more confidence in our economy and can get back on our feet faster. And so that, as a brief summary, I'm going to turn the time over to Nathan.
Thank you. As stated, I'm Nathan Siegert, professor of economics, and I'm very happy to be talking to you about some of this research. This is a really big team effort with Mac Gowlin, MJ Yang, Francisco Navarro Sanchez, and I'm very proud of sort of everything this team's been able to put together, because there's been a large discussion about the importance of these mask requirements. What we see is a consensus growing about the public health benefits of these mask requirements. We document this as well. We see the importance of these requirements in decreasing case counts. What we want to do, what we investigate in this research, is what is the impact on the economy, and at what level of government is best to enact these sort of requirements. So to the first point, I want to say that statewide mask requirements are able to save lives and livelihoods. The data is very clear that when people feel more confident, they go out and they spend. They go out to their stores, and so it is important for these policies to increase consumer confidence. Again, that's what we see. Second, something that's kind of novel and interesting about this policy, this research, is we actually asked a representative sample of Utah residents what they would do, how they feel about state mask requirements. And what they tell us is that they would be about 50% more likely to go out to stores if there was a state mask requirement. I think that just points to the importance of everyone feeling that going out in our daily lives is safer than making sure it's safe so that we can go on with the economy. Some of the things that I want to point out in terms of the data, so where are we getting these conclusions? So the interesting thing here is we've brought together a lot of different data sources, a lot of different analyses, and they're all pointing in the same direction. So first, we have data from Google, which combines millions of cell phone data that registers when people are going out to stores. And that's a really nice data source in terms of it tells us in high frequency how people are responding to different policies. Just for instance, in other research that we've done, we show that people actually pulled back their going out to stores well before lockdowns occurred this spring. And I think the point of that is to note that no matter what requirements, whatever government policy there is, at the end of the day, it depends on how people respond and people understand the risks that exist. And so the nice thing about these mask mandates, or what we've found about these mask mandates at the statewide level, is that they increase consumer confidence. And so people are willing to go out and spend at these local businesses. The other data that we have is from credit card spending. Again, a very unique and sort of novel and interesting data source that gives us another high frequency look at how people are feeling about the economy. And what we find there is that with statewide mask mandates, credit card spending increases. Okay, and so again, this is consistent with that mobility activity data, which is that when these requirements are put in place, more people are wearing masks, and we see an increase in economic activity, which is good for everyone. Okay, the other interesting note about this research is we've had a lot of counties and a lot of states who have put these requirements in place since April of this year. And so we could use that as a laboratory to really look at the effectiveness of these different requirements. And in the paper, we look at lots of different cuts of the data to look at what makes these things more effective and less effective. And the thing that really pops out is that statewide mask mandates are much more effective at both saving lives and livelihoods. They have a much larger effect on the economy. They boost consumer confidence more than these county mandates, right? So I think before this research, there was an open question. Maybe we should put these mask requirements to different levels of government. What this research shows very clearly is that the statewide mask mandate has the biggest effect in terms of both, in terms of increasing consumer confidence and thus allowing people to go out and spend in the economy. Great, so in conclusion, what I just want to say is this research is a combination effort of research that's happening at the university at large. There's great research being done as part of the HERO project, just trying to provide data and information in this time of the pandemic. And from this research, what we're finding is that statewide mask mandates have a positive effect on the economy. Thank you.
We'd welcome some questions now about the research or any of the economic activity that Natalie has been reporting on.
Hi there, this is Kelly Pierce from KSL News Radio. I have a couple of questions about some of the things that were in the report. One of them is, Salt Lake County's had a mask mandate since probably like May-ish with extremely high compliance, yet on page 9 of the report, you say that people tend to follow county mandates more than state ones, and yet Salt Lake's had a lot of cases and a lot of deaths, kind of more than most. Can you explain that if mask mandates work?
Nate, you want to take that?
Yeah, of course. So maybe I should clarify with the question. I think that the report actually says the reverse, that people are actually more compliant with the statewide mandates. We see that in terms of case counts going down more after the state puts in these mask requirements. What we see is that mobility goes down with the county mandates. And so maybe that's what you're referring to. And so what's kind of interesting and in stark contrast between the statewide mandate versus the countywide mandate is that when it's done at the county level, it's not providing the same level of consumer confidence as it does at the state level. And that's evident in the data in that mobility, that going out to the stores goes up after the statewide mandate, but does not go up after the county mandate.
And then I have a little follow-up question to that as well. And you say sometimes cases grow despite mask mandates because of just overall case surges. But on page 13, your research also shows new cases appear to stop increasing entirely after mandates. Isn't that a little bit contradictory, or can you explain that?
Yeah, great. So the difficulty in studying this type of effect is that we know that if you just look at basic correlations, you would see an increase in cases around these mask requirements because the mask requirements were put in place particularly because there was an increase in these cases. And so what the research does is go to great lengths to understand not what happens to cases themselves, but what would have happened to compare the cases to what would have happened if we had not put mask mandate in place, right? And so what we're saying is that what we see is a decline in the cases relative to what would have happened if we did not have these mask requirements in place. Does that make sense? Great.
Yes.
I'll let Natalie here.
I was just gonna make one comment. I really liked the question about the county boundaries versus the state. And I just wanted to make the point that we have considerable research and know that economies don't follow county boundaries. They don't respect county boundaries. That economies are regional in nature and they cross county lines. And so it's perfectly, makes a lot of sense to me that what happens in Salt Lake County, what happens in Utah County, Tooele, Summit, Davis, Weber, this is all part of a single Northern Utah metropolitan county. And so you'd see a lot more confidence with state action there than you would an individual county boundary one. So I thought that would just be interesting. And the Gardner Institute released a report this week. It's up on our website, gardner.utah.edu, that shows the regional economies in Utah.
Hi, this is Katie McKellar with Deseret News. Keeping these findings in mind, what would you like to say directly to people who have been protesting the statewide mask mandate here in Utah?
Would you like to hear that from Nate? Or is that mine? You know, what I'd say is we're all facing a set of trade-offs here. And if you choose to not wear masks, you're causing the confidence of your community to decrease, which means you will see reduced economic activity. To me, the findings are fairly compelling that if we want to push the boundary, meaning we want to have better health and a better economy during this really critical time, we really should wear masks.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I wasn't sure. I know you guys just talked about the county versus the state a moment ago, but can you tell us what you found specifically in Salt Lake County, or what county specifically did you find where maybe the mask mandate or wearing a mask in general was not going to be as effective?
You know, I think we can have Nate, just to clarify, this is county level data for the entire United States. So we haven't necessarily picked out particular counties in this, but I think Nathan can speak to some of the factors that actually affect the efficacy of these mandates going up and down. So I'll have him speak to that.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Yes, as Taylor said, we use all the mask requirements across the United States, and that gives us a lot of data points to look at what exactly happens. What's interesting is, at a broad stroke, what we find is that the messaging around these requirements have sort of two effects. The first is what I highlighted previously, which is that it has a boost in consumer confidence and people go out and spend more. The second effect is that it can actually inform people that the risks are higher than maybe they thought they were previously. And so in places where those risks, maybe people thought they weren't as high, what we see is that people bring back their spending, they bring back going out. And so, for instance, in counties where compliance, as measured by the New York Times survey, where they asked people how often they wear masks, when we look at counties that had high compliance versus low compliance, we see a much bigger effect, a much larger increase in economic activity and consumer confidence when people had higher compliance. Okay, so I think that's consistent with this trade-off between when you're putting these mask requirements in place, you're sending signals to people, and we all respond to that, and we want to do this in a way that increases confidence the most. And that occurs with these statewide mask mandates, as opposed to at the county level. And through the paper, we see lots of different cuts, whether this is urban versus rural, high compliance, low compliance, early in the pandemic versus late. Again, you kind of send more of a signal. We knew less in May than we do now.
Happy to take any other questions. We're not seeing any in the chat, but would be happy to take any that remain. Okay, well, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. We appreciate all you do to keep Utahns informed, and happy to take questions offline. Thank you.